Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of A to Z CFB, where we're going to talk about the top 25, the college football playoff committee, as well as a little bit of this coach carousel that we are, seeing right now. It's been one of the craziest ones that I've seen, at least in recent memory, and we're about to have what, five or six different head coaches in the SEC next year. So that'll just be kind of fun, I think, overall to see, to explore, to get to see grow together. Um, so first things first, really, with this is with the coaching carousel, right? We got a little bit of movement. We got Virginia Tech hiring James Franklin, and then we have, LSU getting rid of Brian Kelly, and we have Auburn and Freeze parting ways, and we can only imagine Kentucky and Stoops are going to be gone very, very soon. Florida's an open spot. Arkansas is an open spot, right? There's all those there, and then obviously is Penn State is going to get somebody, impressive, and then there's all the other smaller schools and some of the other big ones still, right? Like obviously Virginia Tech seems to have found their man, but or Oklahoma State, right? They still need a head coach there. So I think that there's a lot of really interesting um, pieces to this. A lot of guys who maybe even I haven't heard of, right? Who end up getting them getting themselves a shot at a head coaching gig, or potentially somebody who is, you aren't expecting to want to get one. And then at the same time, you'll get people who don't want to touch any of these positions with a 29.5 foot pole, right? So I think it'll be really interesting to see how this all shakes out. Getting into it, the Heisman ladder this week, we have same honestly as last week. Fernando Mendoza 3, Ty Simpson 2, Marcel Reed 1. I think really Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson are interchangeable, but I think the most impressive player this year has been Marcel Reed, leading this Texas A&M squad to, being the only undefeated team left in the SEC. Uh, that being said, there was a good amount of movement this week in the top 25. Now, we also got the college football committee top 25, our first one of the year, and which makes my number 25 pick look kind of silly because I have Cincinnati as my 25th team. They had a pretty bad loss to Utah this week, but they were the class of the Big 12 just simply a week ago. Um, and the college football committee just completely has them out for a team for in favor of Tennessee and Pittsburgh and Iowa, all still in there, who are honorable mentions for me, along with James Madison and North Texas. But that also brings up another pretty interesting thing. The college football committee uh, doesn't college football playoff committee, sorry, does not seem to have any real notable preference right now on a group of five team. You would have to imagine it's Memphis at the moment, but there's a couple out there still, and you will see on my top 25 where I have some of them, but they didn't bother ranking any of them. So there's no way to be certain to see which one is actually the front runner right now. That being said, though, I still think that Cincinnati, despite their bad loss, is the 25th ranked team in the country. They dropped 12 spots. They are still a very disciplined team. And I don't think that this one loss should really discredit against a very good Utah team at Utah, should really discredit what they've been able to do this year too much. Number 24, that's going to be Miami. They have taken their second loss now to an SMU team who just extended their head coach. Um, and it's one of those things where when it seems like when it rains, it pours, right? Uh, Miami is gone from uh, you know number one team 4 weeks ago to now their second conference loss, really putting them into that hope and pray category of for college the college football playoffs, because I just don't know, like they need that ACC championship at this point, and they're not particularly close to there. They need a lot of things to go their right. They need to, for all intents and purposes, hope and pray. Number 23, that's gonna be the Washington Huskies. They did not play a game this week, but they're up a few spots from where they were last week. This is one of those teams that's really benefiting off of their two losses, right? They have Michigan and they have lost to Ohio State. Those are pretty forgivable losses at this point in the year. That being said, you never want to give teams Really, you never want to give them credit for losing to good teams, but this is a team that I would say is squarely in the camp of fun and frisky. If I had one team that I was saying is fun and frisky, it's going to be the Washington Huskies. They have a pretty manageable end of the year with Wisconsin, Purdue, UCLA, and then they get to face Oregon for really what could be a very, very big game from a relatively underrated Washington team. Number 22, one of the teams they lost to, that's gonna be Michigan. They are 7-2, and they just have to blow out a good team. Now they had, besides their game against Washington and game against Central Michigan, the Chippewas earlier this year. This Michigan team really has not done anything impressive. They kept it close against Wisconsin. They kept it close now this week against Purdue. This team needs to separate themselves in some capacity because they are just not doing that right now, and they're not beating good teams. Number 21, that's going to be the Missouri Tigers. They had an off week, but Bo Pribula is not expected to play once again. Matt Zollers is still a very capable quarterback, and I think with another week of making him catering the offense to him, having him work with this, Zollers is much more of a pocket presence than Bo Pribula is, and much less of a runner than Pribula is. So the offenses, while Zollers is very capable, are very much not very compatible with one another. That being said, all hope is definitely not lost in Columbia, Missouri. They are a two-loss team. They definitely have things can go right for them. Another team that kind of is in the same boat as Missouri is going to be Oklahoma. Handing Tennessee their third loss in what was a really, really cool Tron-inspired blackout in Knoxville. Oklahoma is just right on that edge of if I'm going to consider them a playoff team. I don't right now. I really don't. I think they had that potential earlier this year, and I think I was kind of expecting them to fall off at some point, with the understanding that they have a gauntlet of a schedule. But that schedule didn't end up being as tough as it could have been, and they ended up losing some games that they probably shouldn't have, notably to Texas. I expected them to beat Texas, and then they had another chance to make a statement against Ole Miss, and they didn't do that either. Number 19, Vandy. They look another hard-fought game against a team that is getting very much propped up in Texas. I still think Texas is a little bit overrated, but I do can't ignore them beating this Vanderbilt team, a team that was like it was a top 10 team just a couple weeks ago, and a few key mistakes not going the Commodores' way really just led them to where they are right now, which is back out of the playoff picture. That loss coming to number 18, the Texas Longhorns. This was the best I've seen Texas. This was Arch Manning's best game by far, I think. No mistakes. A bad throw here or there, but pretty much everything was just about as on target as you can get. Didn't have to use his legs that much. His offensive line kept the pocket clean, and he threw for 3 touchdowns and a second most amount of yards on the year, just over 300. The running game was still on point, and pretty much as far as their year goes, they still have Georgia and Texas A&M on their roster. If they can take one or both of those games, they have absolutely propelled themselves right back into the playoffs in my mind. Number 17, that is going to be the Memphis Tigers. One of the teams I got to see this last week when I was up in Houston. I got to see Rice get demolished by Memphis this week, and I got to see that Friday, and then I got to see West Virginia get a ranked upset win over Houston that Saturday. Now, Memphis, they're 8-1. They have that bad loss to UAB, but frankly, they're dominating most other teams, and they are one of the, if not the best, I can't remember specifically, the best, one of the best teams in the country when it comes to scoring in the red zone. So if they can continue this and they get maybe a weaker team in the playoff bid, assuming that they are the playoff team, we might be able to see a Brennan Lewis, Greg DeRosier led upset. Brendan Lewis, when they did shut down Greg DeRosier this weekend, still had over 300 total yards, including a slew of touchdowns. So it's really just a pick your poison out there in southwestern Tennessee. Number 16, that's going to be the USC Trojans capturing a hard-fought battle in Cornhusker Stadium. This is a big win for this team after losing to Notre Dame. Despite not having his best game, Jordan Mailata did everything he needed to do. And this rushing offense and overall defense really, really, really stepped up this game. King Miller, the running back for USC, got himself 129 yards and a tutty, as well as Jordan Mailata still finding his way into the end zone with his legs. This USC team, probably another team I put into that Washington category of fun and frisky. Number 15 is going to be the San Diego State Aztecs. They're 7-1, and frankly, I think that they are just a touch better than Memphis right now. And I think that if I'm making the CFP uh, right now, I'm putting San Diego State in as my 12th seed and my group of five representative. They handled Wyoming very well, a very fun and frisky Caden Anderson led Wyoming team that I think that has done some pretty impressive things this year. As well as they have that really, really dominant win over Cal this year, a team that has shown some real flashes of brilliance at times. I think that San Diego State just right now is getting beaten out by how many teams were ranked so highly in the American. But I do think that if Memphis loses another game this year, that it is all San Diego State show all the time, at least for that group of five representative. Number 14, Utah. They jumped a ton of spots this week after hosting what was nearly a top 10 ranked Cincinnati team and utterly dismantling them, right? This is the Utah team that I want to see. Back when, if people remember an old player, Bryce Ford Wheaton, it's the jersey I wear all the time from West Virginia. He's a 6'4", long, big wide receiver that got drafted by, I believe, undrafted, but I think signed by the Bills and has spent the last few years battling injuries on the Giants. In his scouting report, they told him, somebody wrote, sometimes he looks like Megatron, and sometimes he looks like he does not want to be here. And that is how Utah has played this year. In the two games that they have lost this year, Utah has just looked like they have not wanted to be there. They definitely have the personnel and the coaching in Kyle Whittingham to beat teams like Cincinnati, teams like BYU, teams like Texas Tech, but they just didn't. They crapped the bed when they needed to the most, and they looked like they did not want to be there. This team could absolutely be undefeated right now, but they have messed up in some inopportune times. That being said, when they're playing like Megatron, they are about as unstoppable as you can get, I think, from a team. Number 13, this team took their first loss of the year. That's going to be the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They lost to an NC State team that on occasion has just hit, right? They have a couple other key wins earlier in the year. CJ Bailey on NC State seems to get better and better as the year goes on, but this does seem Georgia Tech does still seem like a little bit of a team of destiny that I think if they can get themselves not even, they're not even if, let's just say Louisville and Virginia, right? Just say they end up playing for the conference championship and we get Georgia Tech beating a team like Georgia at the end of the season. I think it's more likely that they keep Georgia Tech in so that it pops up Georgia leading to a Georgia Tech playoff berth. I think they're definitely not out of it yet. But one more loss is still from an ACC team is absolutely enough to kick them out. Number 12, that's going to be the Louisville Cardinals. And looking back at this, I think I'd rank them one higher. They have three ranked wins now that Pitt is ranked by the CFP. I think I'd put Louisville probably one spot above this and switch with my 11 team Notre Dame, but this is already what I've published, so this is what we're rolling with this week. With the Georgia Tech stumble, it seems like Louisville is on the warpath to another Big 12 ACC championship appearance. This is another team that I would describe as fun and frisky, right? Sometimes they can play really, really well. Sometimes they play like they did in the first half of their JMU game earlier this year, if any of you guys watched that. Their only loss this year has come to Virginia, who is, one of the most efficient offenses in the country and right now leading the ACC. So I think that this Louisville team definitely could make some splashes down the stretch, and they control their destiny. So that is always fun too. Number 11, as I mentioned, a second ago, that's going to be Notre Dame. They took down Boston College 25-10 this week, and with a lot of hype from the CFP committee, I think they're going to have to, we would have to see Marcus Freeman walk into the street and shoot somebody before they got any sort of reparations for that. That being said, Notre Dame is definitely a very talented team, right? There's no doubting that. They just haven't won the bigger games that they need to, right? Their Texas A&M loss looks phenomenal. Their USC win looks really good, right? That was a win that was very necessary for their resume. But at this point, their Miami loss is not looking nearly as good. So I think they're in a really, really interesting spot, but they will likely make the playoffs should they win out. That's just my opinion. I don't know if I agree they should, but that is just my opinion. Number 10, that's going to be the Virginia Cavaliers. I just mentioned them a minute ago, but they continue, like I said, to have one of the most efficient offenses in the country. They took down a Cal team, sporting Jaron Coway, Sagapolu Tele, one of the best rookie freshman sensations in college football right now. Virginia is they're right now they're the class of the ACC. They're playing some really good football, and at this point they are the team to beat in that conference. Number 9, that's going to be Ole Miss. Beating South Carolina 30-14. I think that was an impressive win. A South Carolina team that took Alabama down to the wire. I think this was a really good team win. And I think Trinidad Chambliss continues to shock a lot of people with his, coming from his story. He has a great story. Number 8, that's going to be the Oregon Ducks. They had a bye week, but I just need to see them do something really impressive. I think they could be ranked higher. And there's another one of those. I don't know what I was doing this week. I think I'd probably switch Oregon and Ole Miss at this point. Now talking and thinking about it a little more, but again, I wrote it, I published it, so I'm rocking and rolling with it. Um, that being said, they have a great opportunity to stake their claim much better this week with a game against Iowa. This is definitely, I mean, I would say it's a trap game because Oregon has one loss. Iowa is now a ranked team. This seems like the kind of win that could propel Oregon into, a true contender right now, but a loss that could nearly knock them out of the playoff picture, I think. Iowa's a very good team, and frankly, if one or two of the teams in front of them stumble, Oregon is right back in the mix for a conference championship appearance. Number 7, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They have a really, really, really big game this week against the class of the Big 12, and that's going to be BYU, who is also consequently my number 6 team. Texas Tech is in the driver's seat of their own destiny. I fear what the committee would do if Texas Tech loses, but they've beaten Utah. Even if they lose to BYU, they still scream playoff team to me. Now, BYU, on the other hand, they scream less of a playoff team, weirdly enough, even though they are 8-0. But I do think that whoever wins this game will assuredly secure themselves a spot, regardless, assuming that even if they lose the conference championship game. Number 5 is going to be the Georgia Bulldogs eking one out against Florida. Granted, it's a rivalry game that happens. I understand. I don't necessarily want to hold rivalry close games against anybody, but they do need to blow teams like this out. In order for them to really be considered contenders this year, they need to blow teams like this out. They also really need Bama or Texas A&M to stumble a little bit so that they can find themselves potentially back in the SEC championship and even potentially find themselves a first round bye. Now, I actually do think it would hurt them if they lost that championship, especially if they lose it bad. But I think that Georgia, as long as they win out, are more than likely a playoff team, although they do have Texas still on the docket. Speaking of the SEC and SEC championship game, right now someone's slated to play in it, and that's going to be Alabama. They also had an off week, they had an off week. And after that close call with South Carolina, they have an LSU battle coming up that is very reminiscent of what we just saw in Ohio State, Penn State, where I think, yeah, the players obviously really want to win, but these are just not the same teams that we expected, right? A lot of us expected LSU to be a much more dominant team this year and not coachless. And a lot of people, especially after that first game against Florida State, kind of expected Alabama maybe to be done. And maybe even at this point, Kalen DeBoer to have been fired. But it's complete switch up, right? We now get to see Alabama play LSU. And I think if there's a trap game, this has got to be one, right? Like you still have a very, very talented LSU team. So I would be very interested to see what this Bama team does. when it comes to how they perform when it comes in this game. I think that's going to be very telling of how they will overall perform in the playoff. Number three, that's going to be the Texas A&M Aggies coming off of a dominant win against LSU, right? They had themselves a bye week. A, a dominant win against LSU that led to the firing of Brian Kelly. Look, the ball is in their court, right? I could see them finishing as high as the number two overall seed in the college football playoff should they win the SEC championship. And right now they are playing some of the best football that have anybody in the country. And that's why I think Marcel Reed is my Heisman favorite at the moment. Number two, Indiana, a dominant victory against Maryland this week. I had some family who went to that game and they were definitely not happy. It was a close game up until half, and then Indiana was like, oh yeah, we're borderline the class of the Big Ten right now, and just kind of took over. Right now, if this is the conference championship, which it's looking like it will be, between Indiana and our number one team, Ohio State, I think that it's going to be a good one. I don't think either team is a rollover team, but I do think that our number one team, Ohio State, at least from a personnel standpoint, is probably just a little better. I think Ohio State, in their 8-0 record, a still defeating a Penn State team that has a lot of talent to it with a Jim Knowles defense that is familiar with this Ohio State offense, they still couldn't do anything. I think that this offense is clicking right now, and it is definitely going to be pretty exciting to see how the rest of this season shakes out. As far as this season so far, it's been a ton of fun and a lot of drama and coach firings and upsets, and frankly, I'm very, very excited for what the playoffs hold. All right, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Go out and watch some football. I hope your team wins this week, and I'll see you all next week.